in August of that year and gazetting the special economic zones regulations in September of that year. Also in that year, the Act was amended. And in being amended, the definition of minister in Section 2 was deleted. The definition had stated that minister was the minister with portfolio responsibility for industry. And the Act had gone into effect with the same portfolio designation. But with the government's changed designation of portfolios, the deletion was made so that references to the word minister as used throughout would be interpreted in accordance with the Interpretation Act, and accordingly would mean the minister having responsibility for the Act. Mr. President, it's on the basis of ensuring continuity and technical accuracy that the bill before us now seeks to amend paragraph 1, subsection 1B in part 2 of the third schedule, which provides that a senior public officer in the ministry responsible for industry, nominated by the permanent secretary in the ministry responsible for industry, shall be members ex officio. And that is to be changed to, of course, neutralize the matter and state instead that a senior public officer in the ministry responsible for special economic zones, nominated by the permanent secretary in the ministry responsible for special economic zones, who shall be a member ex officio. The intention is simply to rationalize the references throughout the bill and ensure that the board composition is appropriate. So, Mr. President, it is a simple bill, just a technical matter for continuity. And so I look forward to the support of the Senate on this bill. And of course, if there are any comments, we welcome them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Horton.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak on the bill an act enacted to amend the special economic zone. Before I begin, I want to say thank you to the police and soldiers who have worked tirelessly over the last year, 2 years in the zone of special operation in Mount Salem. They have done a really great job, and we want to commend them for all the hard work that they have been doing. They gave me a message to tell the government that they still haven't received their pay as yet, so they would like to be compensated for the work that they have been doing. So if you can pay them, please pay them. On the 2nd of August, we'll be handing them some awards. The Valley Foundation does a lot of peace through sports initiatives, and on the 2nd of August, we'll be handing over some awards to the police and soldiers for the great work that they have been doing in Mount Salem. So give them a round of applause once more for the work that they have been doing. Mr. President, the government appears to be running a house, and it appears that the leader is in one room and the rest of his cabinet are dispersed in the other rooms. For example, the leader might be in the bedroom, a minister might be in the kitchen, someone in the living room, and all around the house. But what has been happening, it appears that in the kitchen the food isn't prepared properly. So the leader moved the chef to the bedroom. The gardener appears to be in the living room watching TV. The leader moved the gardener to the bedroom. The housekeeper somewhere outside gazing. The leader moved the housekeeper to the bedroom. It appears we're playing bedroom politics. Everybody seems to be moving to the bedroom. Mr. President, the Special Economic Zone was an economic institution orchestrated by the late great Arthur Lewis. At that time, economies were recently developing at that time, and he was devising a strategy. as to how a country must approach their development efforts. He said that in the rural areas, there is labor with low cost, and in the urban areas, people want to seek opportunity. So in order to move labor from the rural to the urban area, there must be some level of industrialization. And that industrialization had within it a type of specialization that was administered where Jamaica at that particular time was to give concessionary waivers to foreign direct investment to come to the country, establish their factories, but use mainly domestic inputs, including the raw materials and the labor. Over time, a lot of countries picked up on that ideology. China, we're at the forefront. Guangzhou, if you know that city, they produce a lot of manufacturing goods. That was Arthur Lewis's model that was supposed to be the foundation of how the Jamaican economy was supposed to exfoliate. Fast forward to the 70s to the 80s, it began so expensive for us to produce the raw materials. It got so expensive for us to really produce using indigenous inputs. So at that time, we started importing the toothpaste in big bulk, importing the sachet that the toothpaste should go in. And all we began doing in Jamaica was to squeeze the toothpaste in the sachet. So all the primary inputs, the raw materials that are supposed to contribute to the real vertical movement of goods and service and productive efforts were strangled. Fast forward to 2020, the zone of special operation, not the special economic zone, sorry, mixing up the two. The special economic zone, in terms of economics, contributes about little over 30,000 people to the employment pool and a total investment of about 1 billion Jamaican dollars, which is about 0.7% of our GDP, less than 1%. Now, as a part of the JSEA role is to monitor the special economic zone, the companies, collect meaningful data, and to analyze the impact of these zones. But what we have seen is that the zone has not been contributing as effectively, one, to employment as we would like, and two, to economic growth as we would like. If you study Jamaican economy, you would know that we've been growing at an average of 0.7% over the last 40 years. This special economic zone was instituted with the aim of assisting the country to grow faster through its use or efficient use of foreign direct investment. So all the government waivers that they have been receiving should be geared towards making their cost of production cheaper, making their business productivity services less cumbersome so that they can produce more. But we haven't been seeing this. What we've been seeing is that more and more people are coming into the industry. More and more businesses are being established. But in terms of moving us into high growth, something I call beanstalk industries, Jack and the beanstalk, we are not seeing this. So the idea here is that the government is constantly shuffling the deck, shuffling around industries, shuffling around ministries, shuffling around government departments and agencies, which we need to shuffle and chump a jack. If you play Peter Pat with the young people, when you chump jack, it means you win and collect. We need to chump that jack and the beanstalk instead of fumbling like Jack and Jill. And the idea here is that the COVID-19 crisis has brought to us a new modern economy before time or before our anticipation of that time. And this means that the economy cannot continue in its regular fashion. The economy has to evolve. And how does the economy evolve? The economy evolves by us looking at where we are and then looking at what is necessary for the country to move forward. And it's not just moving a department from under one ministry to another. Because it says here, a part of the role of the special economic zone is to attract investment and to facilitate growth. So part of its responsibility is to attract investment, so it definitely falls under Ministry of Investment and Commerce. But the other part says it's here to attract economic or to assist with economic growth. So it might be able to fit in the Ministry of Economic Growth and whatever it is called. It should be called Ministry of Development because development supersedes growth. So it appears the sofa doesn't fit the living room, so you bring the sofa in the bedroom. So what is the problem? Yes, it is still functional, but is it serving its best purpose? These are the things that we have to think about. When we move the special economic zone, we want to look at what are the key growth industries that we need to facilitate. Is it the BPO? I was having a lengthy conversation with one of the owners of one of the major BPOs in the St. James West Central constituency yesterday morning, and they are saying that the artificial intelligence is going to render the current BPO redundant in a few years. Yeah. So what's our level of thinking? What's the approach that we plan to take in order to make sure that the country in the next few years doesn't find itself now toiling effortless to create industries, speaking about the BPO, that are going to be redundant in a few years? Any energy and effort that we emit now must be in an effort to create industries that have far-reaching longevity. Yeah. The fourth industrial revolution, the gig economy, has brought upon us new ways of thinking that we must take into consideration. We were discussing contracts, and he was saying to me, well, the 3-month and the 6-month contracts are going to be very dangerous and have been very dangerous because people are paying benefits, they are not receiving them, the employer's contribution is becoming a problem, the NIS, the NHT, all of that is becoming a problem. And I was saying to him, with the gig economy, you look at things like Uber, you look at sites like Fiverr. Uber allows you to go on the platform and leave the platform when you feel like you are becoming your own boss in a system. The gig economy allows contract workers or people to offer their services on contract, not even 3 months, for a week, for a few hours. They too are going to require security, not just job security, but also national insurance security, also NHT benefits, also education tax benefits. So the new world must be structured in such a way that we create a system for these employees that no matter if you're hired on a contract for a day, hired on a contract for a month, hired on a contract for a year, you are able to benefit from the overall benefits that the country has to offer. And it is serious that we talk about these things because the special economic zone was established especially to move the country along high growth industries. It was established in order to move the country to take advantage of investment that will move us towards the fourth industrial revolution. Jack and the beanstalk. If we're shuffling the deck, we need to chump the right jack, Mr. President. Mr. President, the special economic zone can be used wisely and must be used wisely. It can't be something that the Prime Minister wants to supervise in-house without making sure that the people we put in the positions to deal with these industries or to ensure that these industries expand are not doing their job properly. The idea here is that we must furnish these ministries and departments with good research. We must furnish them with good researchers. We must furnish them with the objective that the country wants to achieve economic development and not just economic growth. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of this approach because if we continue to focus predominantly on growth, we will never grow substantially in order to become a developed nation that we aspire to be. So economics is simple. Economic growth is important for economic development important for stability, economic stability important for economic growth, and the cycle continues in that specific order. So it is important for us to think carefully about where we are. It is important for us to think carefully about where we need to go. And then we use these legislative processes to achieve these goals instead of just moving the desk around the room. It's time to stop. It's time to stop. The Jamaican economy has found itself in a very peculiar position because the COVID-19 crisis has illustrated to us that many of our industries, including tourism, is significantly affected by external shocks. And when you speak about the robustness of your domestic economy, you want at least 50% of your economy to be generic, homegrown. Yes. at least 50% of your economy must be homegrown. The others can be import dependent, can be tourism dependent, can be export dependent, but the locomotion of your economy must be on the strength of the domestic players. Very, very important. So where does this leave us? This leaves us with the idea that we have to strengthen our domestic base. We have to now begin to look at the industries that we have domestically that are robust to these types of global occurrences. We have to look at now industries that will help us to move out of this problem that we're in. In the 1930s, the United States and the world found itself in the Great Depression. It was an economist from England, John Maynard Keynes, through his propositions that if the government was able to intervene in the domestic economy through their investment, then it will spark economic activity. Now, prior to that, the government did not really get involved in domestic and economic affairs to that extent. But through Keynes' advice, through Keynes' research, through his propositions, the United States government started building dams, started building railroads. That allowed more people to become employed, more people to get involved into the productive efforts of the country. They were increasing water distribution. They were improving transportation. That is what helps the economy to move forward. And I see us building roads. I see us building highways. But what about the water distribution? It's as if we're putting on the icing before we make the cake. What are we doing? Putting icing on bulla? It doesn't make any sense. The idea here is that we have to take steps to move forward, but we have to do what we need to do before we do what we want to do. So we want to build roads, but we don't really want to distribute water. But we have to distribute water because water distribution is an important aspect of any modern country. Should I speak again about my brother's wife who came from Singapore on her first experience? You can replay the tape. She was devastated when she turned on the tap and couldn't see any water. She never seen that in her entire life, and is a big woman. Jamaica is a modern country. We are becoming civilized. These are the things that we have to pay attention to. Split the country in a 4, build 4 dams, north, south, east, west. Water distribution. People become employed. Infrastructure. These are the important things that we need. Where are we going to get the money from? We don't have the budget. Use the budget wisely. Use the budget wisely instead of using the budget to buy birthday cake and rent yacht and market you and market me. Use the budget to distribute water properly across the country. Use the budget to make the cake before we put on the icing. It is important. You need water, guys? We need water in Mayall. We need water in Kentucky. We need water in Tower Hill. We need water in these places all across West Central St. James. And I will not stop advocating for us to build sustainable water distribution processes. We are a modern country. We must act in a modern way. Agriculture. Agriculture. And I feel it from my friends in St. Elizabeth. I heard that the sugar plantation and the sugar operations are now closed. This is now bringing us to an industry that employs close to 50,000 people. I don't drink sugar, youth. I stop drink sugar, only me drink. Sugar reminds me too much of slavery. So it's a thing when I cut out of my diet completely. Only if you know something when I buy. But if I can avoid it, I do. That doesn't mean I'm not thinking about the people who work in the industry. I am. I hold them dear to my heart. What are we going to do about them? It's close to 50,000 people. Sugar has been on a soft budget constraint since the 90s. It's not just the sugar industry that's received concession. It's the sugar industry, the tourism industry. Most of the industries receive concession. When is Jamaica going to realize that the government support we provide is to assist industries to grow and expand like beanstalks? And we should not invest government resources in Jack and Jill entities. We need to find some type of way to accommodate the people in the sugar industry. We need to find some type of way, if it is the case that we plan to produce sugar, to produce it at a cheaper rate. We need to find a way how to get the value added out of agriculture. And if it is not sugar, because I wouldn't advocate for that, I would advocate for other crops. Crops that I can yield 100,000 a pound, 200,000 a pound if grown properly. I wouldn't advocate for sugar. May I pay 200 Jamaican dollars a pound. We like the slavery type of thinking and mentality too much. But that's just me. That's just me. My type of economic management, and in 2007 when I was given the distinguished IMF academic fellowship and I went to Washington, these are things that we spoke about. The mindset of growth is critically dependent on a mindset of economic development. A mindset of growth is critically dependent on a mindset of development. A mindset of growth. Look, I have an idea. I have an idea, says one minister to the other. I have an idea. Let's pretend as if we're going to build a road in Montego Bay for $1 billion. The road going to cost X. We take X. That. We have to get out of that frame of mind. We have to start thinking about, if we're going to spend this money, create the infrastructure, we can build some businesses, and instead of taking off, we can create 4 times the amount. That is what the Jamaican people are expecting from us as leaders. They are not expecting of us to try to misappropriate the budget year after year after year after year. They're expecting us to use the budget wisely. And this is why we have to learn from our mothers, because they know how to spend, they know how to appropriate, they know how to get $1 out of 15 cents. They know how to get a pound out of a shilling. They know how to do what we call stretch things. And that is the approach we have to take to leadership. We have to begin to stretch the dollar to achieve more for the country that we claim we love so much. I have no objection to the special economic zone moving. All I am advising is that when it does move, it is not moved to supervise the activity of those who monitor it, but it is moved to increase the function, because we think that this is the best way to do it. Think carefully about the things that I've said today, and I hope that Jamaica can become wise. And in the words of great Emperor Selassie, it was his birthday yesterday, until the philosophy that holds one class inferior or another class in Jamaica, I can't use race, because browners are not becoming a matter, we're still black, when we go to England. It was surprising to one of my friends when we went to school in England, and when she came, she used to look uptown type of thing. And when she come to England, she realized that she get treated same way like me. So well, are we still black? Different class and so, but class line is just an illusion when Indian people create, man. We still can deal with the thing in such a way where we can develop and move forward. Until philosophy that holds one class inferior and another superior is finally and permanently abandoned and discredited, SOE. SOE. If it pleases you, Mr. President, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Horton. Senator Brown?
President, I just want to support what my colleague Senator Horton has said. There's a difference between the Jack in Jack and Jill, whose water didn't get down, and Jack and the Beanstalk, which got real prosperity. Mr. President, I want to start by recognizing a statement issued by the UN today, congratulating Jamaican Pamela Cook Hamilton as being appointed Executive Director of the International Trade Center. You missed that, Minister. But I want to put on record, she is the second Jamaican following Pat Francis to occupy that august position in the International Trade Center. I was fortunate some years ago along being part of a delegation with the former Prime Minister, Portia Simpson-Miller, to have visited Pat Francis while she was Executive Director, and the benefits that have flowed to Jamaica over the years from this. It shows, Mr. President, that we can get the economic transformation because we have the people. We punch above our weight. We punch above our weight on the international arena. When I think of the role that Dr. Deans played in the logistic industry, which Tony Hilton championed, and which is key to the economic zones we're talking about here. So I am confident because a lot of foundation was done in the 18 years and subsequent to the 18 years. A lot of foundation for this country's real prosperity. But this real prosperity, Mr. President, will not be achieved if the model I'm seeing here is pack everything in the so-called Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Some people now begin to describe it as a detention center because every recalcitrant is called there. They don't go to court. I see a senator describing it as prison cells because people who have done wrong are transferred there. Mr. President, if Senator Webby was here, I think you'd agree with me that we have to measure things to know if we're doing good or bad. And 4 years after the creation of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, I'm searching for the growth. I'm searching for the growth. Before COVID hit us, we were down in growth. No, it's not 1.7. It is 2.3 decline in the first quarter of the calendar year, January to March. And we know the COVID effect came towards the end of March. So it has been a trajectory of downward growth that we have faced. So when you measure economic growth and job creation, it hasn't shown up in growth. And yes, COVID has come, but the projection for the quarter ended June was 12 to 14% decline. When I look at the PIOJ report and the fiscal rules, they said that all the plans left by previous government, claimed by this government at the NHT, will see the NHT building 380 houses this year. That can't help us. That can't help us with growth. That can't help us with growth. So we're not growing. And COVID has made it worse. And if I may quote Donald Trump, it's likely to get worse before it gets better. So we can't say the third quarter, that I'm not quoting him on that. The third quarter is likely to be negative again. The Prime Minister himself speaks of a recession that we're in. The IMF predict 5% decline, and it could be higher in terms of decline this year. It's not a good state we're in. We can say the reason for this is COVID. But COVID or not, people have to go back to school in September. Or are we going to treat them? Are we going to reach out to the parents with some assistance? Because, Senator Gill, through you, President, you and I know many workers are without a bread. And those who are seeking to claim redundancy are being told by high-powered people that you shouldn't get the redundancy you should you should be lay off for 270 days. That's what some of them proposing. So we're not having a good time, Mr. President. And I think what we need to do is have the Prime Minister let go some of the things to other people to go and work, unless he has no confidence in them. Unless he has no confidence in them. Right? When I'm seeing what you get, Mr. President, while we look at these economic zones, you ask yourself, you shift it from one ministry to the next. Which minister is going to use his assignment, his or her assignment there for self-enrichment? We saw Halliwell, that people wanted to lease Halliwell. We saw what Lola got at Allen Estate. And so I have no doubt that unless we tackle the appetite of ministers for self-enrichment, we're going to continue to suffer as a country. And it can't be that you shift the minister from one portfolio to the next. You can't take a man who have said, well, I didn't know anything about it, and then come and say, I was wrong about the lands at Allen, and then you put that person in charge of lands. It don't make sense. And so I wonder the judgment of the Prime Minister in making this shift in this legislation. I wonder it. And so unless we firmly deal with the incompetence or greed of ministers, it matters not where the economic zone falls, which ministry it falls under. It matters not if it's not producing the results we want in growth. I can't forget the former Minister of Finance used to talk about 1% anemic growth. But right now they would give anything for 1%. They would give anything for 1%. But the foundation was laid for growth. Port Royal cruise ship pier, discussed and laid foundation laid through the UDC. It can't be, Mr. President, that under the Ministry of Economic Growth, we are giving away beach that value 3.5 million US for 200,000 when the UDC needs all the money they can to improve places like Duns River and to do other things. It can't be. And I saw, judging this government after 4 years, Senator Arden is right. It's about shuffling the jokers in the pack. You didn't say jokers. But that's what it's not doing. Shuffling the jokers in the pack while the country begs for real growth. I am not moved by this, but it is the government desire. The bill will be passed, but the country is measuring. Just as you have failed to deliver your aspiration, you say, of sleeping with your windows open and your doors open and waking up alive, so too have you failed. Where's Senator Hill? You gone? He knew we were going to talk about 5 and 4 and the Economic Growth Council. So he has left? He can't steer the course. So the government has failed in getting the 5 and 4. In fact, what you have achieved is likely -5 in 4. And that's not good. That's a 10-point spread. That's a 10-point spread. The government has failed in the economy, Mr. President. The poverty is growing back in the country. The crime hasn't been resolved. And so just shifting ministers and shifting portfolio responsibility, not going to cut it. But it is their will. As I said in closing on the other part, one day the trumpet will sound. and we will be on that side. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown.
Mr. President,
Minister?
just to be clear, the bill before us is not seeking to move the special economic zone within a ministerial designation at this time. That was done in 2017, and I explained that at the start of my presentation. What is being done is simply for continuity and technical accuracy to amend the paragraph that deals with the representation on the board from the ministry, which had regretfully been retained as with a reference to the Ministry of Industry per se. So now it just provides a little more flexibility by referring to the special economic zones themselves. And I just want to be clear, Mr. President, that despite certainly sharing some opinions or some of the views of Senator Horton regarding, of course, the need for diversification of the economy and our focus on growth and development as twin partners in upliftment of a nation, I think that there are also several things which have been said in the debate with which I disagree. And I think I would just essentially assert a few things. One, in respect of the call to the government to spend budgets wisely, perhaps not in respect of dams, but I want to say that this is why we have had record housing starts of more than 20,000. Far more were done in 2 years, in our first 2 years, than the entire 4 years of the previous administration. We've had record road improvement, both at the highway, main road, and farm road level, and parochial roads. We've had record police station renovations and construction, Mr. President. All another one again today. Mr. President, we have had record employment, and this just in respect of comments which were made in respect of the competence of the persons who sit at the Special Economic Zone Authority. The truth is that there are more than 40,000 persons employed in that industry as a result largely of the work of this authority. And they were well on track to attract an entire scope of opportunities were on the immediate horizon as they were readying themselves to host the Global Economic Zone Conference, which we hope, of course, will be put back on stream. Mr. President, in respect of distribution of water, which of course I have to not only address in terms of the ordering of our steps, because in all of the road construction which we have been undertaking, the major road construction, one of the features that has been certain is the fact that pipes were now being laid before the roads were built. And more importantly, especially looking at the Mandela Highway, they were being connected, unlike pipes laid under previous administration, which were laid and built and never connected. Never connected. And then to complain about no water. This administration raised the budgetary allocation to rural water authority, Mr. President, by more than 700 million, above the 100 million that was provided the year before, to focus on bringing water to people in the rural areas of Jamaica, Mr. President. And this has been rolled out in the repair of pumps, the creation of catchments, the fixing and construction of large tanks, the connection of tanks that were built in remote areas and never connected. They're just there sitting in the middle of nowhere. Mr. President, irrigation is also being rolled out from west to east, and again in the hills of Jamaica, Mr. President, we are working to ensure that the infrastructure is there for Jamaica to grow. So, Mr. President, we are significantly and severely impacted by COVID-19, as is the rest of the world. And if people feel that there are political points to be scored by somehow highlighting it as if it is the fault of the government, they can take that to the people and see how that is assessed. Mr. President, again, the bill before us, not a complicated one, simply correcting a paragraph that appoints a member of a board. It does not shift the location or ministerial designation of the authority. So I ask for the Senate's support of the bill. I ask for the bill to be read a second time.
Thank you, Minister. The question is that the bill be read for a second time. Those in favor? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Special Economic Zones Act read a second time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Thank you. I put clause 1. Those in favor? Against? I put clause 2. Those in favor? Against? I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Against? The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Against? I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Minister?
Mr. President, might the bill be read a third time?
The question is that the bill be read for a third time. Those in favor? Against? Madam Clerk?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Special Economic Zones Act read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Mr. President, it's now intended to proceed with the Interception of Communications Designated Persons Order, which will be taken by Senator Samuda.
Thank you.
I imagine you would. Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? Minister?
Mr. President, the Interception of Communications Act was enacted in 2002 to provide for the interception of communications sent by means of telecommunications networks and for connected matters. The legislation authorizes the interception of all of the communication of a specific person named in a warrant and enables authorized officers to request technical information from telecommunications service providers under the Telecommunications Act. The Act is of significant assistance to the work of the Military Intelligence Unit, along with other primary intelligence agencies, namely the National Intelligence Bureau, the National Division Special Investigations Unit of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency. Section 16 of the Act speaks to disclosure of telecommunications data pursuant to subsection 16. The Minister of National Security may prescribe any person as a designate for the purpose of section 16 by order, subject to affirmative action. That is a responsibility that the Minister of National Security, I know, takes very seriously. Now, I think for the benefit of all colleagues and certainly all those who are listening and will listen whenever it has been rebroadcast, I'd like to bring my colleagues' attention to subsection 16B. It speaks specifically to the information that does not include the contents of a communication other than any data falling within the paragraph, which is about use made by any person, of any telecommunications network or of any part of a telecommunications network in connection with the provision or use by any person of a telecommunications service. Now, why this is important is because this this order, as we are contemplating here for affirmative action, does not speak to the access of the content of that communication. It speaks to the fact that the communication happened. I think that distinction is particularly important as we weigh issues of privacy and other concerns that ones may have. This speaks to whether or not the communication happened when it happened, not to the content of any communication. It's a major difference, Senator Knight. Well, it helps, as I will go into, it helps in the building at the very early stages of case building to know whether there is indeed communication taking place, which is particularly important. So you can determine what next steps are necessary. Yes. So access to real-time information is essential to the work of these agencies. Preserving the lives of Jamaicans in extreme cases of terrorism and kidnapping also is extremely time-sensitive. The order laid in the Senate today will provide additional structure and expediency in the approval of requests for telecommunications information for the strict purposes of advancing Jamaica's fight against these extreme life and death situations. The persons designated are holders of high offices within our security architecture, and their character and work in support of Jamaica's national security imperatives are indeed above reproach. Mr. President, the order gives effect to the following. The following persons are prescribed as designated persons for the purposes of Section 16 of the Act: the Chief of Defense Staff of the Jamaica Defense Force, the Head of the Military Intelligence Unit of the Jamaica Defense Force, the Commissioner of Police of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Assistant Commissioner in charge of the Narcotics Unit of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Assistant Commissioner in charge of the National Intelligence Bureau of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and finally, the Director General of the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency. Mr. President, it is imperative and indeed critical that we provide our security forces with all the resources and efficiencies necessary and that are available in order for them to effectively carry out their duties. Criminal organizations involved in acts of extreme violence and kidnapping are indeed a threat, and a threat that we all accept to our society. By approving these designates, we improve the response capabilities of our security forces to what are life and death situations. I look forward to the support of colleagues of the Senate. Thank you.
Senator Samuda.
These are my notes. You can speak from it.
The time of the speaker has expired.
I find myself in support of this amendment. Indeed, I feel very pleased that the minister has finally appointed, named, designated personnel to carry out the functions provided for under that legislation. That legislation actually was developed policy-wise in 2001. under a particular minister who I think you know. And and may I say that the minister who succeeded me had the pleasure of piloting the bill, but I chaired the committee. Yes, the legislation committee, and there was a joint select committee on it. And it is a great tool in our ability to fight crime, because a lot of the criminal activity that takes place, the use of the telephone is an integral part of it. And I think that as there is also some focus that is being placed on improving the anti-gang legislation, the Interception of Communications Act will play a vital role in that, because it has the designated officers and the authorized officers, and the idea basically is to collect information which the statute authorizes the minister to share with a foreign jurisdiction. And some of the gang activities transcend the local jurisdiction and go abroad. And it would also, in my view, be quite helpful in scamming activity, because I think that may very well be one of the offenses in the schedule that could be covered. There are adequate provisions in the statute for the protection of privacy, and in that this is not a matter where neither the designated authority nor the authorized authority can simply intercept communications or get information on any telecom activity. This has to be the subject matter of an order from a judge of the Supreme Court. And the statute sets out very clearly what the procedures are to be, and criminalizes the activity of any authorized officer who divulges information. I think this statute had become the subject matter of some controversy some years ago, in that the statute makes reference to sharing intercepted information with a foreign jurisdiction through the development of a memorandum of understanding, an agreement, MOU, between Jamaica and any foreign jurisdiction. And I recall well that in 2011, when this 2010, 2011, when the statute was used to enhance our crime fighting activities, that the previous minister, that is the minister before 2011, had come under a great deal of criticism for having a secret MOU. And one tried to explain exactly how that went, but I'm not sure that it really was able to escape the political scars. The fact is that the MOU arose out of a cabinet decision. Cabinet approved the entering into that MOU. And in those days, the partners that were usually engaged would have been the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Those and Jamaica. So that what happened was that cabinet authorized the entering into of the MOU, but the MOU itself wasn't a document that went to cabinet. It was necessary for the MOU to come back to cabinet. What cabinet was interested in was the authorization of it. And I hear the Prime Minister from time to time saying you can't reveal all kinds of things. For a document to get to cabinet, it has to go through a process. And along the way, all of this is being disclosed so that perhaps my colleague Senator would now be fully aware of how the MOU was treated, how it was developed, how it was treated, and why it was not a public document. But the history of this is particularly important because what this statute sought to do and achieve was to move the interception of communication from the hands of the political directorate and to put it into the hands of the operational persons, police, soldier, intelligence, and intelligence, both military and police. What was then the National Firearm and Drug Intelligence Center. But prior to the introduction of this piece of legislation, there was a lot of controversy about interceptions, and the controversy was political in nature and internal too. And as a matter of fact, it caused one member of the opposition who was sitting somewhere down there to have crossed the floor and contested an election on behalf of the People's National Party and won. And for quite some time, I had thought that there was a close connection between yourself and and it gave the whole framework was such that it gave rise.
Sorry, Senator Knight, you now have disabused yourself as any connection between the two. You have disabused your mind of any connection between this.
Yes.
And
yes. 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 It gave rise to what was called at one stage Gang of Five.
What is that?
And so on.
I'm too young to
And
know.
I remember Prime Minister then sitting in the middle there, having to answer a barrage of questions which were raised by the now leader of government business in the lower house. I can now say that because that's part of Hansard, where the procedure at the time was that the police would go to the Attorney General for the Attorney General to consent to an interception being done. And then from the Attorney General, they went to the big yard, they went to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister would sign off on it. And it was alleged then that the Prime Minister had signed, the then Prime Minister, that is in the prior to 89, had signed off on phones of ministers of government being tapped. That was in the Parliament. Said in the Parliament.
Ronnie wasn't paying attention.
And it caused, as I said, the part of it, the categorization of the Gang of Five, which spread into the Gang of 11, and the movement of one parliamentarian from one side to the other, and questioning Prime Minister Michael Manley when he announced the policy in here about whether or not Michael Manley had discovered that his phone was tapped.
Is Michael Manley?
No.
Oh,
yes, and the then Prime Minister Michael Manley said he wasn't going into the details of it. Whose phone? It was your party leader as Prime Minister who in this house was accused of ordering the tapping of his ministers. Here. But one of the things at that time, as I just told you how it went, the Minister of National Security did not have any jurisdiction to order any tapping of any phones. But the Minister of National Security came under attack from time to time, falsely, that phones were tapped, and he knew. He didn't know. He wasn't involved in the process.
He was suspicious.
He wasn't involved in the process at all. So the long and short is that we have moved far away from the policy through the legislation, that structure, and I believe that this will be a tool that will assist you in your crime-fighting activities. All I ask is follow the provisions of the law. There can be a temptation not to, but follow the provisions of the law.
Thank you very much, Senator Nye. Minister? Oh.
Mr. President, it's a bit unusual for me to be such a burden on my colleagues, but I do agree.
Sorry, 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay, no, go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. With the objectives of the resolution. But in looking at the original act, the principal act, I just wondered and noticed that in all circumstances, the warrants are judicially generated prior to the use of the warrants. And I wondered what happened in cases of emergency, because there could well be emergency cases where there are not sufficient time to go to the judge to get the order, so that I understand, but I noticed in the United Kingdom that they have a system where if there is a designated emergency, you can go to the judicial commissioner, which is a judge-type creature, but not actually a judge, Queen's Counsel and retired judges and so on. Within 9 days after if you proceeded to do it without the warrant, and the commissioner would then indicate whether you can continue, and if he chose that you cannot continue, he would order what is to happen to the information you got. Very well. But in the modern world that we exist in, with the availability of telephones widely now and various forms of communication so much easier. Indeed, my friends on the opposition side, many of them have 3 cell phones, which is a good thing, but that shows you the proliferation of the instruments in Jamaica. There could be occasions when just not enough time to get the judge to give the order, and I think we really ought to have a leeway, as circumscribed as we have discussed that the UK have, and that we could use, Mr. President. I'm very sure that the providers could be protected, Mr. President, because I know that things are moving very quickly, and sometimes when you get the approval, the moment may have passed. I do support, Mr. President, just for the query. In due course, I'm sure an answer will be given.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sorry. Thank you, Senator Bram. Minister?
Mr. President, I wish to thank colleagues for their contributions thus far, to the motion, to the debate on the motion. I think I'll start at the last point made first dealt with by Senator Bram, just to say that we can't make good the enemy of the great. This significantly improves the efficiency that shortens the time in life and death situations. I think there will have to be further contemplation, just as this Act has seen amendments and various orders since 2002, I think as recent as last year. So I think both administrations that have had it have sought to what they found to be situationally appropriate at the time. When it comes to matters of privacy in this nature, and because of the awesome power that such an act gives, there is understanding why there would be apprehension, regardless of where persons sit. Even reading this into the Hansard, when you consider what it means, it's an order with significant powers and expanding of those powers, so it can't be taken lightly by anyone who is going to support such an order, as I expect my colleagues to support. So that was Senator Braham's point. I'd wanted to, and it had slipped me at the beginning, just to, because that wasn't related to that act, so I hope the same leeway will be granted. Senator Horton had made the point about payments to police and soldiers. There is no such issue as it relates to payments of officers working within ZOSOs. It's just not the case, and what I would suggest to you, Senator Horton, to use your welcome address when you joined us in the Senate. Do I believe you should have been here from day one? Right? No, hold on, no? No, I do. But the belief, however, that you should be here, and I refer to your opening speech. Your opening speech was about accuracy and bringing certain things to the debate. When we're going to bring things like that of such a level of gravity, I think we need to make sure that we have the facts when we bring them to the Parliament, because no such situation exists as it relates to the payments. He made the point about the payments to police and soldiers within the ZOSO. No such issue exists. And I stepped out to make extensive checks to make sure that what I knew was so. So please bring it. If he has evidence, please bring it. But I have no such evidence, and I've made significant checks and I stepped out. Then I'm happy to retract, if that is the case. He was correct. However, he is not. My information is that he is not. All right? Now, to another point, Senator Knight, I found myself agreeing with most of what you put forward, and I do, having now had access to the process, see how these varying MOUs are negotiated and what they bring about. But I just wanted to clarify the MOU that you were referring to is the one that became the center of the kerfuffle in 2011. Is that? Yeah. So I just wanted to read from a case that I know you'd be intimately familiar with. Point 3.4 of the findings of the Commission of Inquiry. No. The Manat. Yes. In seeking, no. Senator Knight, the Commission of Inquiry, in seeking to justify its use of wiretap evidence in its indictment of Mr. Coke, the government of the U.S. relied upon a memorandum of understanding signed by Dr. Phillips when he was Minister of National Security and Justice when the PNP had formed the government. The memorandum had been signed in secret and not disclosed even to the Cabinet or to the Prime Minister at the time, the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson. Which is a different matter as to whether it was disclosed or not. So the point I'm making, Senator Knight. So what I would say is we're splitting hairs around public versus secret. The fact and what has been used, unfortunately, we can't take back what is in the Commission of Inquiry report, and we can't take back what were then statements of then Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller saying she was unaware of it. So public versus secret. So I'm making a point. No, well, I'm going to make a point to support one of yours. Senator Knight, I'm coming. Senator Knight, it's the road, the fact remains the Cabinet and the Prime Minister were unaware. And though I have no issue with I have no issue with the statute. I have no issue with what the MOU sought to achieve. We also have to agree that the road to hell is often paved with good intention. So good intention, but it was secret. That's my understanding of what I've read and what has been provided to me in information. So agreed. So our MOUs we don't have to operate in that manner. Either way, So, Mr. President, I ask you for your protection. As we move forward, Mr. President, the order before us. Sorry. So, the order before us, Mr. President, as we have discussed, has designated the order. I'm not running from it. I've said what I have to say. The order before us this evening, Mr. President, authorizes 6 persons, 6 positions, persons who occupy 6 positions, to 6 to the following persons are prescribed. I ask, Mr. President, that the order be approved.
Thank you very much, and once again I thank members for the manner in which the debate was conducted in relation to the Interception of Communications Act and the motion thereof. All in favor? Against? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just for the record, allow me, as we bring our sitting today to a close, to also state for the record the great pride and elation we feel in the appointment of Pamela Coke-Hamilton to the role of Executive Director of the ITC. Truly, it is another example of Jamaican excellence on the world stage, and in particular, of course, the excellence of Jamaican women. We know that at this point in time, certainly trade internationally is facing an incredible amount of challenges, but we know that Mrs. Coke-Hamilton is well equipped and experienced to meet them, and she has already replied to my tweet indicating how much she looks forward to working with us at the ministry and of course the rest of the Caribbean in addressing our concerns as small island developing states seeking to conduct export-led growth. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. Might I therefore ask for the Senate to be adjourned for a date to be fixed?
Thank you very much, Minister. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned.